Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all ages, it is a Thursday this week instead of a Tuesday, but it is still championship rings. Brandon Lewis from Brandon's World, Josh Ungar from the Ungar to the Max YouTube channel. Josh, we got college basketball, we got NBA, we got NFL, we got wrestling, we got a huge show. Let's not waste any time and let's dive right into it, my friend.
Sounds good to me. And should we storm the court or should we not?
Well, that is a good question because should court storming be banned in college basketball? Of course, after the incident that occurred, obviously, over the weekend between Duke and Wake Forest, big topic out here, obviously, in the sports universe. And my thought on it is, I have never really been a big fan of the semantics, if you will, of college sports. All the band, the rah-rah, and the cheering and all that, and the court storming is a part of that. I do think it's distracting, but I do think that it is special to college sports, and I don't know how you can stop it outside of, obviously, security and people saying that you can't storm the court or your team is basically going to forfeit the game. So yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's not the worst thing in the world. I do think that, for player safety, maybe we pull the players off the court. I don't know if the players really need to be involved in the fans storming the court, but it really is a tradition for college basketball, and there's not a lot you can do to stop it.
It's not just a tradition in college basketball. You see it all the time in college football when there's a major upset. I remember when Tennessee upset Alabama like a couple years ago, I think it was, the fans stormed the field and literally tore down the goalposts, which was quite funny.
Yeah, I think that part is wrong. I don't think you should be out there cutting nets down or damaging field goal posts. I think that's wrong. I don't think that's in your right as a fan. I mean, it's crazy enough that fans are able to, go from their seats. And again, these are mostly kids that go to the school. But the fact they're able to go from their seats down to the court, you don't see it in professional sports. You don't see it in high school sports. Imagine, if you will, let's take football, for example. Imagine, a kicker would be, I think, the easiest example. Kicker makes a game-winning field goal, and, the parents of the kicker storm out of the court. That, I think, would be out of bounds, and, I would not like to see that. But I think that, a lot of these kids, obviously, the kids that go to the school are invested in their team. A lot of their friends are on the team. They want to celebrate with their friends. I get it. Again, when everybody is going towards the court, security's not going to stop everybody unless you just say, hey, this isn't allowed. The team's going to forfeit the game if this happens. But I think in a mad rush like this, I think that, especially in the Duke Wake Forest situation where it really wasn't a buzzer beating situation, the upset's going to happen. If I'm both teams, with 10 seconds left, roll the ball down the court and get everybody out of the way, get everybody to the benches, and let the people storm the court. But don't let your players be in any danger, because at that point, I don't care what happens to a player or a fan. That is your responsibility and your role, and you are liable for that because you are essentially in the crossfire.
So the most common solution I've heard since this whole conversation came up, earlier this week, and obviously it's continued, is for the school, whether it's Wake Forest, Ohio State, or whoever, but those were the two schools where this conversation has come up because Wake Forest stormed the court and Kyle Filipowski of Duke got injured as a result of the court storming. And earlier this season in women's college basketball, Ohio State upset Iowa, and Caitlin Clark, who is just about 18 points away from breaking Pete Maravich's record for the all-time scoring record in college basketball. She got injured. So that's why this court storming incident has come up in conversation. But anyway, getting to my main point, I've heard the solution of put 30 seconds on the clock, and in that time allow both teams, primarily the visiting team, to get off the court or off the field, whatever. And after that 30-second clock runs down to 0, that's when you're allowed to storm the court or the field. Whether we're talking, because you could do the same thing in football or basketball.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, but I think it would rely on people following instructions, which, as we both know, and again, as I say all the time, it doesn't matter what political side of the aisle you're on. We know that this world is full of chaos, and we know that people are rule breakers, and a lot of people are not leaders. A lot of people are followers. So I think in that scenario, it would require clear communication, whether it be from the PA system or whoever. You guys cannot start storming the court, but if people start doing it, again, if it's 10 people, 30 people, hundreds of people, whatever,
right,
if they start doing it before the 30 seconds, it's going to be a moot point, because I don't care how many security officers you have. I've heard this discussion, over the past couple of days. Oh, just raise the security at events, which I get where you're coming from. But when you have that many people storming the court, security is not going to matter, obviously.
Right.
So
and let me further expand on that point, because I've heard put rope around the court. When you have that many people, like you and I are both saying, what's rope supposed to do? It's not going to do much.
Yeah. And the other solution that people have said is, well, if the winning team, if they storm the court, then, they're going to forfeit the game. Well, somebody from the other team, maybe from the losing team, maybe the losing team starts storming the court or something to make sure that the winning team does forfeit so they can get the win. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, people are nuts in today's world. There's a loophole for everything.
Yeah. And what's crazy about this whole thing is, we're talking about it. Everybody's talking about it this week. And eventually the conversation's going to just kind of blow over. And probably nothing is going to be done about it in college football or college basketball.
Well, I think the fact, and you mentioned this, that Kyle got hurt for Duke, and obviously Caitlin Clark got hurt for Iowa in her incident, that then raises red flags. And I do think that, if a player does get severely injured or something, they may be forced to take a look at it. But I agree with you that in the end, there's really nothing they can do about it. And, I just think that this is sort of where we're at right now as a society as a whole. Obviously it's a apples to oranges comparison. But
right.
a couple of weeks ago, we were asking the question, is it even safe to be at a championship parade? This week we're asking, should court storming be banned? These are questions that a decade ago in our society, we would not even be posing. It'd be the norm. It just goes to show you how the world has changed.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing. It's clearly going to take more than, Kyle Filipowski or Caitlin Clark getting injured for something to change with court storming, because, again, we're having the conversation about it, but is anything going to be done about it?
I'll say this: if one of those two players, because one of them is obviously the best scorer, going to be the best scorer in the history of college basketball, men or women. The other is a very high-profile basketball player at a high-profile university. If one of those players got severely injured, Like I'm talking out for the season, torn ACL, torn Achilles, what have you. I think that then this scenario would change.
You might be right there, but I can't definitively agree with you on that because, again, it like we've had incidents like this before. Maybe not with high profile of players as these two, but it's not like this is the first time players have gotten injured from these court stormings.
From the hardwood of college to the hardwood of the National Basketball Association. Because I was watching the Nuggets versus the Golden State Warriors. I believe the game was last Sunday night, and Nikola Jokic put up an insane stat line. Excuse me. He had over 16 assists, 15 plus boards, 20 plus points. It was just absolutely insane. And on Monday, as I was preparing for Brandon's Warrenburn, what I'm going to do for my podcast over the course of the week, I had thought of something that I wanted to save for this show because I wanted to have this debate with you. So, Josh, in sports, I think hockey would be sort of the one exception because of the salary cap rules in that sport. And there's obviously a ton of teams every year that can win the Stanley Cup final. But in sports, we almost always have dynasties. You know, in football, we've gone from the New England dynasty to the Kansas City dynasty, essentially. In baseball, you know, we went from the Yankee dynasty, then there was a little break. Then I would say the Giants had their run when they won the 3 World Series in 5 years. And now I think over the last, 7, 8 years, we've been in the Houston Astros dynasty, where whether they've won championships or not, they've been in the ALCS 8 straight years. In basketball, it is the easiest sport, I believe, out of the major 4 to win the title. And we've seen dynasties left and right from way back in the day to current dynasties. And obviously, Golden State has had their run. Now, they did extend the dynasty a little bit by winning the 2022 NBA Finals, but it does feel like that dynasty is coming to an end. So now, in my opinion, you have to look at the next dynasty. And when you look at this Denver Nuggets team, the 2 leaders of this team, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, they're very young players. They are locked in for years to come. They have, I would say, a good bench, not a great bench, but a good enough bench that with depth and good pieces, they can certainly win the championship again this year. And when you look at Nikola Jokic, I don't know, and I was critical of Jokic before last postseason because I never seen him win anything before. And in the NBA, we need to see guys break through before we anoint them, in my opinion, as the best players in the world. So now that Nikola Jokic has broken through and he's put up monster numbers again this season, and he's the favorite to win another MVP, which would be his 3rd MVP award. If Denver goes on and wins the title this year, because let's face it, there's not a lot of teams in the West that match up with him. Maybe Oklahoma City and Minnesota do. They're way too young. I don't think Golden State does. I don't think the Clippers do. And I don't think the Lakers do because I don't think Anthony Davis can handle him. So I think Denver's got a great chance to win the title again. And they're so young. Jokic is so dominant. Jamal Murray is arguably the best player in NBA history that's never made an all-star team. This Denver team to me has all the ingredients. Good coach, star player, star number 2, good veteran presence of being the next dynasty in the NBA.
I think it's, well, first of all, we get to see a finals rematch tonight in Denver because the Miami Heat are taking on the Denver Nuggets tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern time.
By the way, the NBA's done a horrible job at promoting it. I didn't even know it was happening until I looked on my FanDuel app today to see what bets I wanted to make tonight.
Yeah. Well, they didn't really promote the finals last year when those two played each other because they thought they were getting Lakers Celtics. But, and then they couldn't talk about LeBron the whole time. So what the hell? But I think it's too early to say that the Nuggets are the next dynasty because you have so much player movement over the course of the season. You have trades that happen, free agency moves in the offseason and all that. You can't control injuries.
So obviously that's the one factor. But I'm saying that if they're healthy, and Jamal Murray, by the way, has had a history of injuries until, last year where he really showed up in the postseason. And I said, if you watched him some nights, he was the best player on the floor in some of those playoff games, even over Jokic, who obviously had a great finals. And by the way, I think that we do now have a blueprint, in my opinion. There is one way to beat Denver, and I think it's very hard to do so. I think the way you beat Denver is you pretty much say, we cannot stop Nikola Jokic. He is LeBron James and Michael Jordan-esque in his prime. Let him get 45 and 15 and 18 or whatever he wants. Let him get 50 points. We cannot let, Jamal Murray and KCP and the other guys around him.
Don't forget Aaron Gordon.
And Aaron Gordon as well. Can't let Aaron Gordon get 15 points. Is basically what I'm saying. You got to have Aaron Gordon get 6 or 7, not 15. That'll break you. So I think that's the way to beat Denver is, you can't match up with Nikola Jokic, because I think there's only one big in the whole league who right now is healthy to match up with Jokic outside of Giannis, and that might be Victor Wembanyama, and obviously his team only has like 6 or 7 wins this year. Now Joel Embiid can, but Joel Embiid is obviously not healthy right now. I think Durant at this stage of his career, even though he's got the height, I think he's too skinny. I think that he's too beat up. I don't think that Phoenix, Nurkic, I think would get body bagged by Jokic. So with that in mind, I think Minnesota with Cat and Gobert could potentially pose a matchup issue. Obviously, Sacramento has Sabonis, but I don't think those teams have the star power to overcome what Jokic is going to do for you production-wise.
You know what I find interesting about the Western Conference this season?
How insanely deep it is?
Well, that, but also, look at all the contenders we have. Minnesota, Oklahoma City. Maybe they're not title contenders, but you still have to say they're contenders, playoff contenders. You have Dallas in the mix, the Clippers, Phoenix. They all did. Golden State, the Lakers, and of course Denver. They all play different styles.
They do, but most of those teams, outside of a couple that you named, obviously Minnesota's got some big presence, but Golden State, the Clippers, Phoenix, those are mostly small teams with not a lot of bigs. They're good.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Well, yes, but while they're good teams, what I'm saying is if those teams draw Denver, I think it's a 5-game series. I don't think Golden State matches up well with Denver at all, as great as they are. I think Golden State, if Denver were to somehow lose, I think Golden State can win the title. That's how good I think they are, but I think it's all about matchups.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying is some teams like to play with size, like a Minnesota, for example, whereas other teams try to play small ball, like a Clippers, for example. Oklahoma City, I think, uses a little more small ball, even though they have Chet Holmgren. I get it, which he's not a rookie, so he should not be in the Rookie of the Year discussion.
Well, technically, according to the NBA, if you did not play a game during your rookie season, and this is true in the NFL, by the way, as well, you are technically a rookie for the first game you play.
Which I think is bullshit.
Okay, well, fair enough. Anyway, even a team like Boston, I don't think Boston matches up particularly well with Denver, as good as they are, and we're about to get to them. I think Milwaukee does, but, will they even make it to the finals? And if they do they have enough bench depth to overcome Denver's? I don't think they do. I think it'd be a very interesting series. But I don't think there's a lot of obstacles for Denver in repeating outside of injuries.
So here's the thing. I think after last season, Denver knows what it takes to win a championship. Granted, I think their road to the finals and to the championship was a little bit easier than it will be this season. Because the Western Conference, I would say, last season wasn't quite as deep as it is this season. And like you said, it all depends on who you play and in what round do you play them. But I don't think Denver needs home court in the playoffs this season like they did last year. Because again, they know what it takes. They're the defending champions. And if it's Minnesota or Oklahoma City at 1 and 2 and they end up as the 3 seed, the Nuggets are like, okay, cool. What do we have to do? Go into Minnesota? Yeah, we've done that before. We have to go into Oklahoma City? Cool. We've done that. I don't think they'll be, intimidated or anything. Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. And speaking of a team that I do believe, need home court advantage in the playoffs, that is our hometown Cleveland Cavaliers. They have two big matchups coming up this weekend. One being on Sunday when they will have a first round playoff rematch with the New York Knicks. The other being the first place Boston Celtics on Tuesday, which you will be at live from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So we will not be on the air with Championship Rings next Tuesday. We will be back on Thursday again. Programming note for that. But this Cavs team, excuse me for a couple minutes if I go on a rant, because obviously we all saw the incredible last 2 nights of basketball. The Max Strus big shot, and then whatever the hell Jared Allen decided to do last night at the end of the first overtime.
How the hell did we get out-rebounded by the Bulls that badly?
That leads me to my point.
Go.
Cleveland has had a litany throughout its entire professional sports history of bad coaches. I believe J.B. Bickerstaff is right at the top with Freddie Kitchens and Hugh Jackson. I am ready for this guy to get the hell. I don't even care. This guy is Coach Bud, the former coach of Milwaukee. I don't even care if he wins the title. You fire him after he wins the title. He's the worst coach I've ever seen in the history of Cleveland Cavalier basketball. Number one, the reason why Max Strus had to make that incredible 57-foot shot is because Donovan Mitchell, your best player, wasn't in the game for quote-unquote defensive purposes. I don't care how great of an offensive player. I give you the best player on the team. You're being taken out on defense. What the hell is that about? Where the hell has Sam Merrill been ever since Darius Garland and Evan Mobley got back in the rotation? Oh, let me see. Nowhere to be found. Jared Allen last night. Did anybody tell you, hey, the only thing we can't do is foul on a 3-point shot? Hey, guys, guess what? When DeMar DeRozan catches the ball, let's tackle him. Let's force him to go to the free throw line, and we'll play the free throw game. And one last point. This game on Tuesday, when Strus had to make that shot, shouldn't even have happened because the Cavs had to turn the ball over on the inbounds pass because the Cavs over the last 2 years in late game situations cannot inbound a ball to save their damn lives. If you watch Cavs games, you know what I'm talking about. This is the worst late game inbounding basketball team, regardless of any level of sport I have ever seen. The rotations are whack. Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, out of all people, are basically carrying this team. Darius Garland, until last night, looked like Ben Simmons since he's been back. I have no reason to believe that this Cleveland team can go far and make a conference final run. I think they'll probably get out of the first round because they'll play in Indiana or in Orlando, and they should beat them. But I'm telling you right now, if they by chance match up with Miami or the Knicks start to slide and they get a matchup with the Knicks, they're going to lose that series.
Let me just say this right now. if we hold on to the number 2 seed, which that's in question right now because Milwaukee is only a half game back of us, and New York is only 3.5 back of us. So it's not a guarantee we're going to keep the number 2 seed. But if by chance we do, I do not want to play the Miami Heat in
No,
the first round.
not at
No
all.
way.
I think Jimmy Butler Jimmy Butler could win this series just by staring into our puppy dog eyes.
I'm not going to comment on everything you said about JB Bickerstaff. Because
Well, why not fight back with me? Do you agree or not?
I haven't really thought about all of that. So I don't.
You're watching the game. How can you not think you can watch this team for 5 minutes? I need aspirin when I gotta have a pill bottle because this guy is the worst coach I've ever seen in the history of Cleveland professional basketball in a late game situation. He has no idea how to manage a rotation. Donovan Mitchell, by the way, is playing a lot of iso ball. And I said this when Darius Garland and Evan Mobley came back. I knew this was going to happen because JB Bickerstaff is a coach who's a good coach when he's not under pressure. When the pressure's on, when he has all this talent to manage, he has no clue what the hell he's doing.
You know what? I see your point. I totally see your point. I'll give you that. But I want to get to the Celtics game specifically. Not that to gloss over the playoff rematch with the Knicks.
Well, that's okay. We'll probably get body bagged inside again, even without Julius Randle. Jalen Brunson will score because we won't know how to stop him.
But I cannot wait for this game against the Celtics on Tuesday night. It got flexed into TNT. So I'm super excited about that. It's Boston's only visit to Cleveland this season because it's a 3-game series and the other 2 were in Boston. Boston is the top team in the league, not just the Eastern Conference. And not a lot of people agree with me on this one, but I think the Celtics and Cavaliers do have a rivalry. I really, truly do.
I think back in the day they did. I don't think they do now.
I fully believe it's still around. Is it like a prominent rivalry? No, but I fully believe the Celtics and Cavaliers is a rivalry. They've met in the playoffs. Let's see, 2008, 2010, 2015, 2017, 2018. We've had LeBron in this series, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo. Kyrie Irving got traded from the Cavaliers to the Celtics. Last season, 3 out of the 4 games in the regular season series went to overtime. And the Cavaliers won the regular season series against the Celtics last season 3-1. I was at the 4th game of the season series in Cleveland, and that game was fantastic. So, in my opinion, yes, Celtics-Cavaliers is a rivalry. And is it one of the best rivalries in the NBA? I don't know about that, because not many people talk about it. But in my opinion, yes, it is a rivalry. And when I saw that when this game was, I immediately circled it and I said, oh, I am definitely buying the ticket for this game. Did I think it was going to be number 1 in the East against number 2 in the East? No, but hey, I'll take it. So I can't wait.
I'm going to make 2 quick points before we move on.
Go ahead.
Number 1, I'm going to respond to your point of it being a rivalry because this is what I've been saying this for the last 6-7 years. I truly believe the last real rivalry in the NBA, you have to date all the way back to the last 4 NBA finals between the Cavs and the Warriors. I think that was the only true last full-blown hate each other rivalry in the NBA that actually meant something with real stakes. Because while Sixers Celtics has been nice and Heat Celtics has been pretty good, they have not raised to the level that Cavs and Golden State was during that 4-year NBA final run, and I don't even think it's close. Now, to your second point about either of these games, Cavs, Knicks, Cavs, Celtics, I am going to be watching our Cleveland Cavalier team very closely these two games. Not even if they win. I'm going to watch how do they come out, how do they play throughout the game, aka how does the coach the team, and we'll see if this Cavalier team can come out. Can they play well all 4 quarters? Because the Cavs are bad at that. They are either really fast starters and they get behind like last night against Chicago, or they come out flat and then they have to play catch up in the second half. So are they ready to play at tip? That's a big factor for me in determining if this team can do something in the postseason. Not even win or lose. Are you ready to play for 4 freaking quarters? Or are your legs going to get tired because, it's March, it's a back-to-back. We play so hard, in this day and age of the NBA where they can't even handle back-to-backs.
I do hate that we play the Celtics on Tuesday and then we have to turn around and play the freaking Hawks on Wednesday. So, but, hey. I'm not the NBA.
Listen, the Cavs got all of their easy wins when everybody was out. They were lucky. The schedule was very easy. If you look back at that schedule, they got a lot of cupcakes on that schedule that got them to where they are. The March schedule is tough, which may help them again come postseason time.
And by no means am I saying the Cavs are title contenders, because I don't believe that. I mean, Boston is clearly number 1. If Milwaukee can get their act together, I would put the Bucks ahead of the Cavs. I would even put the Knicks slightly ahead of the Cavs right now.
I don't know about that. I think head-to-head, I think they're better than the Cavs, but I don't know if they're better overall, if that makes sense. I think it's a bad matchup for the Cavs, but I think the Cavs are the better team.
Okay, that's fair. I do agree. Let me say this. I do agree with you about the rotation issues. Like, I don't get it. Why are we not playing Craig Porter Jr. more when we take Darius Garland off the floor? Craig Porter Jr.'s had some good moments this season.
Because our coach doesn't know what he's doing.
I also agree with you about Sam Merrill. Let me also just say this. Do you remember Lamar Stevens?
Great player. By the way, I believe he's in Memphis, right?
I think he's with Boston.
No, I believe he was in Memphis. I think he had a good night for them the other night.
Anyway, so I don't get why he didn't play in the series against the Knicks.
He is with Memphis, by the way. I was right on that. And yeah, I agree with you, but I don't want to rehash that right now.
Fair, but I just wanted to say that because when I was at the game against Boston last season, Lamar Stevens was a big part of the reason why we won that game. So the fact that he's not with us now still bothers me a little bit.
All right, Josh, we got to shift gears to the National Football League. We got to talk about Chicago Bears current quarterback Justin Fields. Who knows? Maybe by the end of the show, he's no longer the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. There are rumors floating out there today that a deal is in place, essentially, between Chicago and Atlanta for the Falcons to acquire Justin Fields. This is something that I have predicted even going back to November. I have told you this multiple times on the show when we were in this discussion. All this talk about Justin Fields versus Caleb Williams and Chicago should trade down and acquire more picks and build around Justin Fields. Chicago fans, if you're out there listening to me right now, if you trade away this generational prospect in Caleb Williams and keep Justin Fields because you want to get more picks and build around Justin Fields, this is why you've been a loser and haven't had a quarterback in 50, 60 damn years. Justin Fields is not a good quarterback. He's the 4th best quarterback in his division. He can't throw. He has a 60% completion percentage throughout his career. His stats dip from quarter 1 to quarter 4 every single game. He is a runner. He is not an NFL generational type quarterback. Caleb Williams is the next great quarterback in the National Football League. He is an overcomer. His losses in college, the least amount of points his defense gave up was 35. If you give Caleb Williams a defense and you give him some talent, which they do have, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, pretty good offensive line. They are ranked middle of the pack. Caleb Williams will make things work. Will he be great year one? No, probably not, because many rookies are not. However,
CJ Stroud was.
CJ Stroud was. He is the exception to the rule. With that being said, CJ Stroud, by the way, was also in a division with a hurt Anthony Richardson, a Trevor Lawrence who was battling injuries, a disaster in Tennessee. Caleb Williams is going to walk into a division with an ascending Jordan Love, an ascending Jared Goff, a very good Kirk Cousins, who I believe will stay in Minnesota with a very good Vikings team, who I think could be better than some people think next season. But would you rather, if you're the Bears, because I think there's a very good chance next year the Bears go 7-10. Let's put a baseline on that. Would you rather go 7-10 with a Justin Fields, who you're not sure about who your quarterback's going to be? Or would you rather be 7-10 with a generational quarterback on the rise with probably a new offensive head coach at that point, with a quarterback on a rookie deal, which you can load up money and go out and spend? This isn't complicated, Chicago. Don't be stupid. Get a second round pick for Justin Fields from Atlanta, who, by the way, in a weaker division, weaker conference, good weapons with that Atlanta team indoors. I think Justin Fields will do very well in Atlanta. I think Justin Fields could be Baker Mayfield-esque in Atlanta and lead that team to a division title. But Chicago's not the right fit, and you got to get over it. It just admit it.
So it's interesting that we're throwing out the term generational talent for Caleb Williams. I see what everybody is talking about. I certainly do. And I'm not advocating that the Bears should trade the number one pick and keep Justin Fields. But given what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes now, when we say generational talent, he's the one you get compared to. So, I feel like that's unfair to say generational talent.
Well, I'll say this. This is why I say he's a generational talent for two reasons.
Go.
Number one, many, and I mean many, of the best NFL college draft experts out there, Joe Quatt, Daniel Jeremiah, Lance Zerline, they all say Caleb Williams is the best college prospect they have ever studied. That includes guys like Andrew Luck, who is a can't-miss prospect, and Trevor Lawrence, who I think has been maybe a little bit disappointing for the expectations, but also he was thrown into a disaster of a situation year one, so you can almost take that year out. Which, by the way, Caleb may be in a very similar situation. We'll see what the deal is with Eberflus and all that. The second reason is his former offensive coordinator, who is now the current offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury, who coached.
That's why everybody's thinking maybe Washington should try and trade up to the number one pick.
Which the Bears are so stupid they would do it, and if I'm Washington, I would absolutely do it. The point being, that Cliff Kingsbury, who coached Patrick Mahomes in college, said this. He said, Caleb Williams is the closest thing to Patrick Mahomes he's ever seen, and he thought Caleb was a more refined and a better college quarterback than Mahomes was. We know what Mahomes has turned into thanks to a year where he got to sit, by the way, and learn under Andy Reid. There's the thought of Chicago keeping them both and Caleb sitting a year, which I don't think would do Justin Fields any favor because I think it would lower his draft stock or, his trade value.
Yeah.
I would not do that. I would rip the Band-Aid off. I would draft Caleb. You also have the 9th pick in the first round. You can use that on another receiver if you want. I would go sign a veteran backup quarterback, whether it's a Case Keenum or a Joe Flacco, somebody like that. Doesn't have to be a mobile guy. Maybe Tyrod Taylor if you want to be a mobile guy, just to sort of help Caleb get him along, because I do think that matters. Patrick Mahomes had Alex Smith to teach him the ropes, a very veteran guy. I think that matters a lot. But Caleb, to me, we see this every year in the draft, right? People try to talk themselves out of picks. These scouts really don't know a lot. The draft is a crapshoot, but I think the people that just are saying Caleb Williams is going to be a bust, they don't like Caleb Williams. They're saying it because they just want to be that guy that's different.
Right. And I'm not one of those guys saying Caleb Williams is going to be a bust or anything like that. I'm just a little hesitant to say that he's a generational talent. That's all. Because of what we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes. Now, that's my only reason for not throw out the term generational talent. But I understand where everybody is coming from. In terms of Justin Fields, I hope he doesn't end up with Pittsburgh, because that would scare me a little bit.
For the record, I don't think he's going to, and I don't think it's a good fit. And by the way, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, as we get closer to free agency. I don't think Russell Wilson's a good fit for them either. You know what I think the Steelers are going to do? They shouldn't do. By the way, if I was Pittsburgh, I would move Kenny Pickett to my first-round pick and try to get one of these quarterbacks coming out of the draft, but they're not going to do it. You know what the Steelers are going to do? We have a great defense. We have a great culture. We can win next year with Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph in a quarterback competition. Yeah!
You are great.
Give me a break. The only reason why you guys made the playoffs this past year is because Joe Burrow got hurt. By the way, have you ever heard of him? I don't know. He's pretty freaking good. Okay, by the way, one quick note. Speaking of Joe Burrow, remember when the Cincinnati Bengals were an absolute tire fire and people thought Zach Taylor couldn't coach? And then, by the way, Joe Burrow, a year after he turns ACL, leads the Bengals to the Super Bowl. Folks, if you have a franchise quarterback, you win games. If you don't, you don't. Chicago, take Caleb Williams.
On quick, want to continue the Bengals discussion here super, super quick.
Super quick, because we got to move on.
Yes, I know. But did you hear the news about what they're doing at Paycor Stadium in terms of the turf?
I heard this. They're putting in the same turf as the MetLife Stadium turf.
Yes. What the hell are you doing, Bengals? Well, you have a franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. Are you trying to get him killed?
Well,
no.
The Bengals are the Bengals. Speaking of the Bengals, they have a running back. His name is Joe Mixon. He's going to be on the market, we assume, this year, along with guys like Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift potentially, a boatload of other running backs. Josh, this was one of, if not our first ever topic when we did a walkthrough of championship rings. We talked about the value of the running back position. Here we are again. And, there's some talk in Cleveland about, could our hometown Browns be trading Nick Chubb, which, by the way, I would do, but I think it's bullshit. They're not going to do it, but I would absolutely do it, as I've been advocating for the last 2 years. Nonetheless, everybody, they're so sad for these running backs. Oh, my God. How many times do I have to tell you about the most overrated position in the history of football, known as the running back position? It was valuable in the 80s. It was valuable in the 90s. It was valuable in the mid-2000s. It ain't valuable anymore, folks. Kansas City drafted a running back in the first round. His name is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Guess what? 2 years later, he could barely get on the field because a seventh-round running back took his job. I'm not saying running backs as a whole aren't valuable. I'm saying paying running backs when you have a superstar quarterback is not the smart move. Because you know what teams have very good running backs on their teams? Usually teams that stink outside of San Francisco. And why can San Francisco keep Christian McCaffrey? Because they have Brock Purdy on such a cheap deal. It's why Indianapolis has Jonathan Taylor, because Anthony Richardson is on a cheap deal. Young quarterbacks need running backs. Veteran quarterbacks, Your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allen, your Joe Burrows. A running game is nice. A great running back is not required because those resources need to go into your receivers, your pass rush, your offensive line before you go into running back. If I was building a team, and I don't care how great the running back is, if I was building a team by position,
Uh-huh.
I would go quarterback, then I would probably go offensive line. Then I think it's really a debate between defensive line and receiver, 3, 4 around there. Then I would go corner. Then probably I'd go safety, then linebacker, and then maybe even kicker and punter before I get to the running back position. Matter of fact, I think kicker may be more important than safety and linebacker. I think kickers decide a lot of games in this league. So that's where I'm at when it comes to the running back position. I'm not changing my stance on it. If you can bring the guy back for a 1-year cheapy deal, that's fine. But once I'm the Titans and I don't have a quarterback or, name the team, the Giants, like, they're going to let Saquon Barkley go. They're probably going to try to get a running back in the draft or something like that. But that's a team like New England. They have Ramondre Stevenson. They could probably use another back because they're so bad at receiver.
Yes.
Washington now, obviously, they're going to have a young quarterback. They can get a running back. Atlanta, they're going to have a new quarterback. We think it's going to be Justin Fields. Bijan Robinson's affordable. Young quarterbacks can get a running back, but once they're on their second contract, I'm not paying them.
And I do hear you on that one. I totally do. The days of the bell cow running back are most definitely over, I would say. If you're going to have a running back on the roster, I think they need to be more of a hybrid where you can line them up at wide receiver on certain plays. You can line them up out of the backfield and have them be a pass catcher, or they can do their normal job, which is just taking the handoff and running for 5 or 6 yards. That's what I think the new style of running back is. Not being specifically designed to run the ball, if that makes sense. Being able to be a jack of all trades.
By the way, I'm not saying that running the ball isn't valuable. I love running the football. What I'm saying is paying one guy 15, 17 million to carry to be the lead back is just not doable in today's game. I would rather have 2 or 3 backs combined get me 1,000 yards. I think the Chargers.
That's what really helped your Eagles knock off the Patriots in Super Bowl 50.
Yes.
52, I think it was, right?
Yes. And by the way, I think the Chargers here are a perfect example because there's a lot of smoke out there that they're going to go get Saquon Barkley. Greg Roman, the new OC, Jim Harbaugh, new head coach. We know they love to run the football. But if I was the Chargers, I already got rid of Austin Eckler because I'm not paying them big money. Why not go out? Obviously, there's 2 backs, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum out of Michigan, who could both be there. There's plenty of other backs. Why not go out and draft 2 backs in the 3rd or 4th round that cost you a fraction and will probably give you the same production that, let's say, Saquon Barkley would give you for $14 million. You could get for, a couple $1 million.
Yeah, and that's fair. I've heard all kinds of reports that Derrick Henry is probably going to end up in Baltimore.
I've heard Dallas as well, which I think Derrick Henry wants Dallas. I don't know if Jerry Jones is going to want to pay him. I do think they'll move on from Tony Pollard. But Baltimore, that's another situation where they have gone for running back by committee. Obviously, Derrick Henry would make them even harder to defend. I'm not arguing that. But Derrick Henry also is a guy who needs great receivers. And Baltimore, as good as Lamar Jackson was passing the ball this year, he didn't have a lot of yards. So I don't know if Derrick Henry's the difference maker for them. Because I like Gus Edwards a lot. I think Derrick Henry would basically be a little bit of an upgrade over Gus Edwards. I think the combination of running back, if you have a bulldozer and then you have a speedster, sort of that 1-2 punch that Buffalo had a little bit, with James Cook and then Latavius Murray. I think that is sort of the formula where I'd want to go. But again, like for my Eagles, if DeAndre Swift were to come back on a cheap 1-year deal, I would welcome him back with open arms. I like the way DeAndre Swift runs, but I'm not paying him a massive 3-year contract.
Yeah. I mean, you saw what brought the Lions success this season was the play action pass with Jared Goff.
Well, they had 2 quality backs that, by the way, they both were not paying. They got Montgomery cheap. I think it was just a 1-year deal. They got Montgomery, and then they grabbed Gibbs. They subbed out DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, who had great production for them, and they basically got the same production with 2 different backs.
Yeah, and I loved the pick of Jahmyr Gibbs for the Lions because, again, he's that hybrid back that I was describing before.
I gotta give the Lions credit because I did not like their draft at all initially. I didn't get the pick of Gibbs when I thought the secondary was a clear weakness on their team. I thought they should have went corner. I didn't like the pick of Lambert, who, as I just mentioned, the linebacker position has also been deteriorated, and both guys seemingly had huge contributions for them. So what do I know about drafting? Apparently, I know the Caleb Williams better than Justin Fields. That's about it.
And Sam Laporta was a great pick for the Lions.
The Lions nailed the draft. And this is the other thing. We remember when the Saints did this a couple years ago when they had Drew Brees still, and they were bad for a couple years, and they had that great 2017 draft. They got them Ramczyk and Kamara and Lattimore. They got good very quickly. Seattle, your second favorite team, did this 2 years ago when they got, both tackles. They got the corner. They got Kenneth Walker all in one draft. Detroit did it last year. You can do it in the draft. It's just very hard to do.
Houston also did it. Remember?
Houston, yep, good point.
CJ Stroud, Will Anderson. I think that was the draft where they got Tank Dell, if I'm
Yeah, they got Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson. You're right as well. So there is on that. But we got to move on. We got to talk wrestling, Josh. We're going to get to AEW Revolution, but let's first recap a show that you thought was very predictable, going to be very boring. We both kind of knew the results of these matches going in, but I thought overall it was a very good show. I didn't think it was spectacular by any means. I didn't think it was an A show. I thought it was a very solid show. It was exactly what I thought. The tag team title match was way better than I thought it would be, and I thought both Elimination Chamber matches absolutely delivered, and that's sort of my big takeaway from the show here as we ended it in the WrestleMania season.
I only watched highlights and recaps of the show. I haven't actually gone back and watched the full thing, but I know what happened, and I have been saying for a while that it's going to be AJ Styles versus LA Knight at WrestleMania.
Yes, you have, and you were right on that, and I give you that.
Thank you.
But I will say this. I don't know if it's written in stone. It's just going to be them two one-on-one. Do they add LA Knight and Randy Orton to those two, as I've been saying, and make it a fatal four-way? Do they have Kevin Owens in there as well?
See, I have a little bit of a different take on this. So I'm glad you brought up both Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. Because Kevin Owens and Logan Paul clearly are not done with their feud.
Correct.
And you saw a lot of interaction between Logan Paul and Randy Orton.
So you think it's going to be a triple threat between those three?
Yes.
Which I absolutely could see. By the way, I think it's a way you can protect Randy. You can have Kevin pin Logan Paul, because I don't think Randy needs to be champion at this point.
No.
So I think Kevin winning the title, if Logan Paul takes the pin, Randy's not involved in the decision, I can get that booking. What I am struggling with, and I told you this, before, what do you do with a guy like Bobby Lashley? You can't leave him off the WrestleMania card again.
Probably carrying Cross.
And that's not going to be a WrestleMania match, I don't think, unless they have bigger plans for Cross. I still think that maybe Logan, Lashley, Orton, Owens, they are in a multi-man match. Maybe Carmelo Hayes, maybe a Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. And
I don't think Carmelo Hayes is going to be in there
that's fair.
because of his feud with Trick Williams.
No, that's fair.
Which, let me just say this super, 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 super quick. I know that the feud between Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes is going to play out on NXT. I understand that. But if they wanted to pull the trigger and do that match at WrestleMania, I think you could totally justify it. I really do.
You could, but I think there's just too many spots to go around.
No, and that's fair. They'll probably do it at Stand and Deliver, which I'm not opposed to. I'm just putting the idea out there. But I want to get to the women's Elimination Chamber match because
you last week said I think they should put Shayna Baszler in the match and take out Tiffany Stratton when Tiffany Stratton stole the damn show.
Yes, I'm eating my words about that. But I'll tell you this: we thought maybe at the Royal Rumble they were going to do Bianca Belair versus Jade Cargill. Are they now teasing maybe a Bianca Belair versus Tiffany Stratton match going into WrestleMania?
I think that could be potentially. Maybe you do Jade Cargill versus Nia Jax. I think, obviously when that interaction from the Royal Rumble, I think that's a scenario. I think also just Bianca teaming up with Naomi and going after the tag team titles is another scenario they could do. I thought Liv and Raquel were going to break up and go into a feud, which, well, they didn't do that. They weren't tag team partners either. And it's clear that Raquel is going to be sort of solo. And I think Liv Morgan may be the one who's sort of playing a tweener character here between Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. Now, I think you got to keep that Rhea-Becky match one-on-one.
Yes, maybe for sure.
Liv moves on to face, probably Becky. Maybe Liv becomes the heel and Becky's first challenger when she knocks off Mommy, as Rhea maybe takes a little bit of a break and they go into a potential Judgment Day breakup storyline where she's away from the title for a little bit. I have so many scenarios. I think this is one of the best times, and I've said this recently, not just as a WWE, but as a wrestling fan as a whole, but specifically speaking to WWE right now. We do not know, and this is what is so great about Triple H and his team running creative right now. Under the old regime, WrestleMania would be 3 weeks away sometimes, and we wouldn't even know what the hell the matches are going to be or the storylines they'd feel thrown together.
Yeah, I feel that way as an AEW fan sometimes.
This year, and I think you agree with me, this year's different. This year feels like there has been concrete plans in place, and while some things have changed, and I do believe that the Lesnar and CM Punk injuries and the Seth Rollins injury completely flipped, because I don't know if you saw the report about the old leaked Elimination Chamber card. It was a completely different card than the one we got this past Saturday in Perth. It was going to be Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre in a one-on-one match. CM Punk was going to win the men's Elimination Chamber match. Seth Rollins was going to defend the World Championship against Bronson Reed. And then the Grayson Waller effect segment was going to be with a face Rock, who would have then went on to face Roman at WrestleMania, obviously. So,
and I think they were going to do like Brock Lesnar versus Dom.
Brock versus Dom. So the whole card got changed around within a matter of weeks, which is why you said last week didn't feel like a stadium show. I think they did the best they could under the circumstances.
Sure, I'll give them that.
And I thought that crowd, by the way, was absolutely great. And I thought it was a great show for what it was. But it just goes to show you, we're talking about all these scenarios for the U.S. title. What's going to happen with Gunther in the Intercontinental Championship? It looks like we're heading towards Judgment Day and Truth and Miz for the Truth and Miz for the undisputed tag team titles. Who's going to win Cody and Roman? Which, again, we have a lot to divulge with that. There's so much going into this WrestleMania that it's so fun because it almost feels like, and I've said this over the last couple of weeks, Triple H and the creative team are working the dirt sheets.
Yes. I think that's why we're not doing excuse me. I think that's why we're not doing Rock versus Roman. I think WWE heard all the negative reaction to that and they pivoted back to Cody versus Roman. But that's just my personal opinion on that.
Now, let me ask you this question because this is still with the Elimination Chamber.
Go ahead.
Do you still think the night one main event of Mania is going to be the tag team match? Or do you think it will be a one-on-one match? Because I think it is very possible between just Cody and Rock.
Now, the way Seth has been kind of checking in on Cody recently, and they did the Grayson Waller effect together, and they had that little promo thing a week or so ago. I do think it's going to be the tag match that headlines. Although, if it were me, I would actually have that open night one.
No, you do not. The Rock doesn't go anywhere but the main event. No. It doesn't matter what you think because The Rock is not going anywhere but the main event of WrestleMania.
The only reason I'm saying that is because you know how big the match or the program is going to be between Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley. So if you wanted to pull the trigger and have that be the main event of night one, I think you could justify that.
You could if The Rock and Roman Reigns aren't on the damn card.
That's fair. But I just wanted to put that idea out there of having Rhea and Becky main event night one.
Again, if this match doesn't take place at all, yes, I agree with you. That's an option. Also, if you wanted to do the World Heavyweight Championship match on night one, that's an option as well as the main event. But I think that match is going to be on night two, which I think will ultimately lead us to a very interesting main event of night two of WrestleMania. I'm going to leave it at that. I already have my opinion on what's going to go down in that main event. I have thought about it over the last week.
We shall see, because don't forget, Damian Priest is still hanging around with the Money in the Bank briefcase.
I think Damian Priest will cash in on night two. I'll leave it at that.
It'll be interesting, but I'll have to go back and watch Elimination Chamber at some point, and I probably will. But from what I heard, it was a good show, like a B+. So
that's exactly what I rated it, was a B+.
Fair enough. Elimination Chamber has never really been one of WWE's big four. I would say WrestleMania is obviously one of the big four. Royal Rumble, SummerSlam. I'm trying to think what the fourth one would be.
I would say Money in the Bank. I think Money in the Bank is a big four. And if you want to put Survivor Series in, I personally love the War Games concept.
I love the War Games concept. I think it's so good.
I think it's brought Survivor Series back to its former glory, but I think Survivor Series and Money in the Bank are sort of interchangeable as sort of that front four. I'll also add this. When they've done their big Labor Day weekend show, whether it's in Clash of the Castle or this year, the show that's going to be in Berlin, those have always typically been big shows. As Backlash the last couple of years, they've gone now to France this year and obviously last year Puerto Rico.
Yes. But I think we agree on the first three: Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam as part of the big three. And I wouldn't say Money in the Bank because I know Triple H has said he wants to put that match on WrestleMania night one.
No, actually, you're wrong. He said the opposite.
I thought at one point he was saying
there were rumors that came out last year that he wanted to put it on WrestleMania, and he shut that completely down. He said Money in the Bank has clearly taken on a life of its own, and it has become such a big concept that it's needed its own event.
Huh. Because I remember him saying I thought I remembered him saying at a press conference or something along the lines of, nobody's ever going to say, I challenge you to a Money in the Bank ladder match or something. I thought I remember him
He
saying.
might have said that very early on when he first took over creative, because I remember he was talking about Extreme Rules and how they were going to go away from the gimmick pay-per-views. That's what he was talking about.
Because didn't they get rid of the Hell in a Cell premium?
That's what he was talking about. He was talking about Hell in a Cell. He said nobody is going to want to have a random feud inside Hell in a Cell. He said, we'll look at Money in the Bank potentially, but then he added that Money in the Bank has become such a big event that it will probably stay its own pay-per-view.
Fair enough.
All right, well, Mr. AEW guy, take us through AEW Revolution.
Yeah, so AEW Revolution is going down this Sunday from the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. We've got some really good matches on the card. We've got Sting and Darby Allin defending the AEW World Tag Team Championships against the EVPs, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, the Young Bucks, which I love their new EVP gimmick that they have going on right now. It is absolutely hilarious. It's great. We also have the triple threat match for the AEW World Championship. Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland versus Samoa Joe, the current world champion. Hopefully Swerve Strickland wins that match. We've got Deonna Purrazzo versus Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship. Unfortunately, that is the only women's match on the card, which as an AEW fan and as a wrestling fan in general, that's really disappointing. I would have loved to have seen at least a second women's match get added. We also have FTR versus Claudio Castagnoli and Jon Moxley. I think that's going to be a fantastic tag team match. I love Dax Harwood. Claudio Castagnoli is just great. And Jon Moxley's just insane, the former Dean Ambrose. We know what he did in WWE, and he has just continued to be a workhorse in AEW. We've got Christian Cage versus Daniel Garcia for the TNT Championship in what should be a solid match. Eddie Kingston is defending the Continental Crown against Bryan Danielson in a grudge match. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything.
Did you mention Christian Cage for the TNT Championship?
Yes, I did. We've got some all-star 8-man scramble match. Chris Jericho, Lance Archer, I think, is in it. Powerhouse Hobbs. Wardlow.
I think there's four. There's 4 names. I think there's 2 that have not been announced.
Yeah. And the winner gets a shot at the AEW World Championship. So I don't get what's happening with that. And we have Will Ospreay making his AEW debut, going against Don Callis, another member of the Don Callis family, Konosuke Takeshita, in what should be an absolutely fantastic match. I think I've got all the matches on the card. I think the match that I'm most interested in, outside of the World Championship match, because I really am a big Swerve Strickland fan, so I hope he wins that. But I'm really interested in the FTR versus BCC match, because they had a match like a week or so ago. No, 2 weeks ago on Dynamite, and it went to a time limit draw. So I thought they were going to do the rematch on Revolution, which is what they're doing. But I thought they would put some type of stipulation on it, whether it was a 30-minute Iron Man match or a 2 out of 3 falls match. Nope. There's no stipulation on it. It's just a regular match. So how is this match going to go? I have nothing against Cash Wheeler, but I just really like Dax Harwood, Claudio Castagnoli, and Jon Moxley, who you're also very familiar with from his time in WWE.
I was never the biggest fan of Dean Ambrose as Jon Moxley. I'm going to throw it out there. I was a bigger fan of Rollins than Reigns during the Shield days.
You know what? That's fair. Dean Ambrose, I think he was a very acquired taste because of his character. So he wasn't.
I liked him. I just never thought he was world championship material. Let me put it that way.
Fair enough. He's definitely proven to be world championship material in AEW because he's been world champion like
And
five.
by the way, in my opinion, he's been a real leader. He's been a grown up when certainly the guy running the company is not. And certainly when you need guys and veterans and a lot of stuff that you have alluded to a little bit that have happened in AEW, I think Moxley arguably is the MVP. And the first guy you think of, it used to be Jericho. And I think now with everything that's happened with Jericho, it's not him anymore. And
Jericho is also in that all-star scramble match.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that, but I do think Moxley, especially ever since Cody Rhodes left the company, which I think has left a huge void in the company that they have not recovered from. I think Moxley has been the guy in AEW.
And I'll give you that. We got a comment here. Christian needs a new gimmick. He needs to stop making fun of people with dead fathers. It's honestly repetitive and stupid at this point. I'm actually going to leave that comment up because I want to respond to that. You're meant to not like him. He's meant to be an asshole and really be this heel character. So the fact that you're saying that shows that his gimmick is working. So I understand what you're saying, Jalen, but at the same time, you're kind of buying into what Christian Cage is selling, if that makes sense.
Hey, I'm just going to sit here and just say that my buddy, Adam Copeland, has not been booked right since he became All Elite. That's all I'll say. I don't get why this isn't a rematch with Christian. The whole thing.
I think it's because Adam Copeland is injured right now. So that's
the whole thing with Nick Wayne's mom just is stupid. I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense. I don't care for it. I think it's ridiculous. And I don't think he's been booked like the star he really is in AEW. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. I'm even though I like AEW more than WWE, I'm not going to sit here and say everything is perfect in AEW. And
I think my biggest criticism about AEW is what WWE used to do with its talent that came up from NXT, which is completely bring them up and make them a big deal for 1 week and then never care about them again.
And I totally hear you on that one. And I totally get what you're saying. Let me just say this. In terms of Swerve, the reason I think AEW, specifically Tony Khan, needs to pull the trigger and give Swerve the title now at Revolution is because he's never going to get hotter than he is right now. Do you remember when Sami Zayn turned on Roman at the Royal Rumble? He got over extremely quickly after that.
Well, he was over before that, but that was one of the biggest massive pops you've ever heard in the history of the sport.
Sure, but like he was not at that point. His momentum got turned up from like a 10 to like a 50 at least. Right?
I agree. Okay, go on.
So my point though is he was so over. I think WWE made a mistake by not giving him the title. That's just my opinion.
I'm not debating that right now. Make your point on Swerve.
So, but it's the same thing. Did Swerve have a big changing moment like Sammy did? No, but if you don't pull the trigger on him now, I think he's going to lose some of that momentum.
Well, in AEW, outside of the whole Punk thing, when he was only champion for a few days, most of their champions have very long title runs, especially the world champion. So it'd be a nice change of pace to have a championship reign that wasn't so long.
Right. And I hate when people say, oh, Samoa Joe would be a transitional champion because he only had one championship defense. That doesn't mean he's a transitional champion. It just means he had a shorter title reign. Like, so what? It's fine.
And with that, folks, we got to wrap it up for tonight. This has been Championship Ring. Brandon Lewis, Josh Ungar. Josh, I think unequivocally, if you are following us on our social media platforms, Twitter at Ring Champion, Instagram Ring Champion, Facebook Ring Champion 216, YouTube Ring Champion 216, I think that you would be able to tell that unequivocally this was one of our best shows.
Oh, for sure. We let our opinions fly for sure on this one. And again, I can't wait for Tuesday night. I have that date circled on my calendar.
So as a reminder, next week we will be back on Thursday because the Cavs game on Tuesday, where we're going to be breaking down, who knows, we may have some trades in the NFL. We will talk about, obviously, AEW Revolution, any more wrestling stuff, some more NBA stuff. Can't wait for it. And we'll see you guys next week.
A salute to you.